Today, we're talking about a subject that I'm really interested in because I'm a teacher. And so I have my cards in my office all the time just for fun. And kids will be like, hey, can I have a reading? And so they had mentioned that they wanted to do a topic on reading for minors, so reading for younger people. So I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but I'm very excited to see what they have to tell us. So who would like to take it away?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for introducing the topic so perfectly. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that tarot is largely considered something for sort of grown-up people. But having said that, I have been asked on a few occasions to read for younger people, especially when I was on the market, actually. People would bring along their sort of teenagers and say, can you do a reading for them? And yeah, I think it's a really interesting subject, like whether it is appropriate or not, and whether we should sort of adapt what we do accordingly. I just think it'd be interesting to know what everyone thinks.
Well, I don't believe I've ever. No, I'm actually pretty sure I've never done a reading for a minor, but I imagine that because the tarot is so real, like if you do a proper reading, it gives you real answers. Um, the way I would go about doing a reading for a minor is kind of crafting the questions very carefully so that they address the the points of concern that the minor is bringing to me, but at the same time they don't dig in too deep to the point where the questions could kind of evoke very disturbing responses. You know what I'm saying? So in a sense, I think it would be reading this to a sense, kind of to a degree. I don't want to say maybe censored, but more like humanely softened. Humanly softened. Yeah.
Now, I've read for quite a few minors. I'm not talking preteens or young teens. I'm talking, 16 through 20s. I've done a few for preteen, but those I kind of watered down because, well, they're not, their parents might be protecting them from life. But I've always asked for permission to do a reading for a minor. And when I am doing a reading, I remember I never grew up. Y'all know that, right? So I remember being a teenager. We know things as teenagers that these damn adults have forgotten. Teenagers have the entire gamut of emotions. They understand life. They haven't gained a lot of wisdom yet. Not all of them. Some of them have. But I've never, ever watered down a reading or censored a reading for one of those minors, because it's still unfair to them. If they're going through, teenagers actually go through freaking hell. Everything is so big and larger than life. So I can use the tarot to help them tone it down or understand what they're going through. And there have been times where I've done readings where I didn't water it down and saw some really serious stuff going on, and was able to help them segue that into speaking to their parents if they trusted their parents, or finding a way to avert disaster. Teenagers, they're not little people, they're people.
But how did you come to be doing readings for teenagers without their parents being there, Sharon? I'm curious.
Any of the kids that came to my house, we would meet the parents. The kids were always, we were kind of like the house to be in when the kids were growing up. So everybody that knew my kids knew me, small community. And, I'd like, they all came for tarot readings, their parents. So when their kids would ask for tarot readings, like, hey, is it okay if I read for your kids? I think very few exceptions said, no, you can't do it. And then I'm going to honor the parents, because ultimately that's, their job.
Yeah.
But most of the time, the parents were like, sure, yeah, if there's anything really bad, talk to me. So that's another thing I would tell them before I would read for them too, is, if we see something here that you can't handle on your own, or is too big for you, or too dire, we're gonna have to get help, outside help,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
There were
Right.
times where kids just didn't trust their parents. There are some really freaking horrible parents out there. There really are. I had one
Mm,
young man who was at my house whenever he could be. He'd beg me, please, Miss Sharon, please, 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 please let me come over. And his parents didn't really give a damn where he was. Him, we
wow.
worked that out together, you know? But most of
Mhm.
the time, you can pull the parents in if it's something dire, if they trust their parents.
Mm,
Because these teenagers, they're not these chaste little perfect creatures we want them to be. They're
mm,
full of hormones, and they're
mm,
full
mhm.
of angst and ambition. They're not little people.
Yeah,
What's your kind of definition of a minor, like everybody? Like,
yeah.
at what age would you class someone as a minor?
Well, I mean, it depends, right, on, I guess, I mean, it's always a legal definition, and different countries set that
Yeah.
age differently, right? I think the UK was it 16, and
Yeah,
then
I think it's six.
it is
It's
still
very
16.
weird over here because it varies. It depends on what it's for, whether
Okay,
you're kind of allowed to do it or not. You know,
yeah.
Right.
So I
but
was thinking more about like so then before, like before that line, and yeah, I mean, what Sharon says resonates with me a lot. Like I remember when I was 15, and this is interesting because it has an astrological kind of correspondence because that's the first Saturn opposition, right? Occurs when you're 15 years old. So it's like a milestone for growth. I think I was more aware of darker themes and more able to handle them, you know? So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like maybe from 15 onwards, um, yeah, maybe you can share things like tough, um, and tough information with the client you're reading for if they're paying and without them kind of really going into a panic, you know.
yeah,
So yeah.
I mean, I've actually had several teenagers learn the tarot with me. You know that their parents have like requested it. I
Mm,
mean, I had when I was before COVID and I was doing kind of live groups, I had one lady sort of, came along every month to the workshop, and she brought her daughter with her who was also, she paid for her to learn it as well. And she was 14, the girl. And I felt a little bit sorry for her because it was, she wasn't ready for it. You could tell she didn't really want to be there with all these kind of adults. I think she was a bit uncomfortable about it. And eventually the mum stopped bringing the girl because obviously it just wasn't the girl's thing. But the
Right.
mum was completely hoping that it would have been, if that makes any sense.
mm,
I do remember once when I was on the market, there were all these kids on a school trip and they stopped at my school at my stall, and it's like, what's this? And I said, oh, it's tarot readings. And they all went, oh, can you tell me what's going to happen to me? They were probably about 10, 11-year-olds. There was maybe 10 of them, and I did like one card for each of them with like the teacher there, and they all wanted to know what job they were going to do when they left school. It was all quite innocent, and were they going to get married and all that sort of thing. So it was very like light-hearted and fun. I do remember that. But I don't think I've ever read for a minor unsupervised. Apart from the ones that have like Florrie, who obviously she was 16 when she did the course with me, and when she came to the lessons every week, no, there was no adult there supervising it. But then I'd already taught her mum the tarot. This was another person.
mm,
No, I've had a few teenagers that I've taught it to.
And
mm,
Mm.
one of my astrology students, she was 13 when she joined the course. She just turned 14, and she's taking astrology with her grandmother and with
Yes.
her they're taking it together, they're learning it. And I was a little concerned at first because 13, but I was like, can she understand all these concepts? That young lady is one of the best students I've ever had. She gets
Yes.
it. We assume that because we're older and we've been through more, that these kids don't understand concepts like that, but they do. They
Oh,
do.
I've
They may
definitely
be a little naive in them, at some of them, but they understand the concepts.
I have found the younger people that have kind of like actually wanted to do it really amazing, like with, you know,
Mhm.
like how they're sort of understanding and interpreting the cards. I must admit, I did a lot of readings for very young people when I was on the market or if I'm at an event, but it tends to be that the parent comes for a reading and the child is there with them, and then they sort of say, will you just do one card for her or one card for him, you know. So yeah, I don't know, I think it's a nice thing for children to sort of be in touch with, you know, that this their sort of higher power, or what, you know, their sixth sense, like encouraging the fact that there is a sort of more to us than just the everyday stuff. But I agree with you, Sharon, I wouldn't do it without consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the
sometimes,
biggest thing. Yeah, because I think, like, to caveat everything we're talking about tarot readings from people who know what they're doing and are going to be respectful and responsible with this tool. We need to
yes.
say that, because just having a child go to anyone with any deck of cards, you don't know what's going to go on there.
No.
So the caveat within what we were talking about is people who are appropriate, trained, understand what they're doing, you know, a decent moral compass and all the rest. So to say that, but I agree. I think consent from an adult, if that in any way could come back on you as a professional, you know, as a reader or whatever other position that you're in, because let's be honest, what is the percentage? Maybe 90% of people aren't okay with tarot readings in some areas. You know, it depends, and maybe you're in an area that it's a very common thing. So I think that's something always to be considerate of and to be mindful of, because if you read for a minor without the consent of the parent, can that parent then come back on you for something? Because tarot is so misunderstood, right? It's hard to have this conversation outside of looking at how tarot is viewed in general, right? A lot of people think it's whatever, you know. That's a whole other podcast topic. But to be respectful,
you've got to be careful. Yeah, I do agree, because we don't record every reading, you know.
Yeah.
We have got no kind of evidence. If somebody said something, oh, she said this or whatever, you can't actually kind of defend yourself, can you, necessarily?
No. And I know with Kevin's area, he treats it, you know, he's like, I'm learning, and they're helping him learn something. So it's light, it's fun. I'm sure he helps them make a lot of life decisions. But like, I wouldn't read for a teenager if they were like, should I sleep with my boyfriend? I'm like, you know, no. Let's talk about this. I know you're gonna, but let's talk about this.
No, you see, you're saying that, but let's just say, I don't know what the age of consent is where you live, Sharon. Well, how old do you have to be to legally sleep with someone?
18.
18. Yeah.
So if you were doing a reading for a person who was 18, so you knew it was legal and you knew for sure that they were of legal age, but they were still very young, and let's just say that they'd never slept with anyone before, would you just do that reading? And
not at 18.
way?
Not at 18. I would do that reading, and I would give them all the information. And as far as 16 goes, you know, there's I could go to jail for doing a reading for a 16-year-old and say, yeah, sure, sleep with them, right? I'm not going to go to jail. So if it's a question you can go to jail for, really, really has that moral implication. Now, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm sleeping with my boyfriend and blah, 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 I'll do that reading. I'll do that. But
if they were underage?
Yes, because they're already, come on, 16, starting with even before 16, all those hormones raging.
Oh no, I know. No, I
Yeah.
know that we all know that people under the legal age are doing that. But I'm saying if you know they're under the legal age and they're doing that, do you think it's right that you do a tarot reading for them that might encourage them in one way or another? I don't know. When what they're doing is technically illegal, could that have a comeback on you? I'm not talking about morally, I'm talking about legally.
Legally?
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Legally, I would make sure, I would talk to them and do your parents know this? And most of the time, 90% of the time, their parents think we're all virgins till we're 102. Yeah. But
Are
I
you
would
saying you're
encourage
not,
them.
Sharon?
Huh?
Are you saying you're not a virgin?
Of course I am.
Oh, that's all right then.
Just ask her kids. Of course she is.
Yeah. Just- it gets a little tricky. You want to be able, with the teenagers, you want to communicate when it's
Yes.
something that big, or, oh my God, if a teenager came to me suicidal, I
Yeah.
would so totally and one of the things that I would do, and the cards aren't going to tell me, but I would get that child hooked up with the suicide hotline. Anytime, adult, child, I don't care.
Yeah,
Anytime
yeah.
someone comes to you suicidal, you get them help.
Mhm.
That's
Yes.
just, yeah. But I've had very, very few questions about sexual relations with the younger ones, because I was an adult at the time, and they don't want us to know that, they've discovered something we don't even know about.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, so very, very few questions. I think I had one, and I had instead of doing a tarot reading with her, I did a deep, deep heart to heart. She
Right.
could have tarot readings on other things, but with things with legal implications, especially, I'm going to have more of a heart to heart and speak to them, and not speak down to them, but try to understand them, so I can help them.
Yeah. Yeah, because the thing is, when you do a tarot reading, you never know what's going to come up, do you? So that is that I'm sort of comfortable about that with a grown adult. I will just go with whatever comes up. But I don't know. I've not had an awkward situation with what would be classed as a minor. It's been always in a sort of like a supervised or light-hearted way. So I haven't
Yeah.
really thought about it too much
Lighthearted. Yeah.
until
I've
this
had some pretty deep
podcast.
ones trying to figure out which college to go to, or career choices, or
Yes,
and then I've had the lighthearted ones. Does he like me? That's then you keep it light. But the serious ones, are usually from those teenagers that are coming on that cusp between high school and real life. Even the high
right.
school is real life, but you know what I mean, adult life.
Mm.
And that's a scary damn thing. Going from high school and having all these responsibilities and having to choose you make all your choices at 18, and school does not prepare you for that shit. Nothing does. And you're
Mm.
thrown into it. And I'm not going to say, even at 16, I think people graduate between 16, 17, 18. They're going to have so much going on that I've always felt like the tarot readings helped ground them, you
Mhm.
know?
What
And
age
And that,
was your reading for, Kevin?
I've got high school kids. So mostly what I've read for of the few kids that I've read for that do tarot. So they've read for me too. We just kind of have fun with we bond over tarot and stuff. I'm in a bigger city area, so it's a lot more liberal. And then the few that I worked with were seniors, and it was like, one was about a college thing, like, will I go out of state or in state? And then the other one was today, was like, should you sing a song by next Monday? And yes or no. And so just fun, easy stuff. But yeah, I would say 14 to 18, 14, 15, 16.
Okay.
No, not 14. I'd say 16 to 18. Yeah.
Right. Right.
I think the main thing reading for minors is just they're not stupid. If you water it down, especially if it's a really complicated question, you're just doing them a disservice. They're people. They have
And you could be like, you could be the first person that's listening to a very real problem that someone, like, imagine the stuff, how quickly some children have to grow up. There are people who are running their household and taking care of their family by the time they're 14. You
Yeah.
know, so to just assume that they are a child until 18. If someone comes to you and you, whether you offer a reading or a heart-to-heart conversation, maybe they don't feel like maybe they're not in school, they don't have a school counselor, maybe their parents, they have no support at home, whatever you can provide. And it's different situation to situation, right? But some young people, minors aged like in that 16 to 18, 14 to 18 range, they've lived they're more grown up than they, you know, really should be at that age. So if you
Yeah.
can offer some level of support, some level of understanding, some level of guidance, that's really at the end of the day, like, are you authentically working to help this person? And as a reader, it's our job to, you know, decide what questions we're comfortable asking, you know, having that proper consultation, talking to them, you know. And I would agree with keeping it light for the most time. You know, anyone I've read for underage, like cousins and stuff. And this is where I'll just say quickly, like, I've chosen different decks. Like my one cousin who's like 7, 8 years old, I have some like very cutesy childlike decks. Like I'm not,
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend about this earlier. I don't think I would have my Rider-Waite deck out for like an 8, 9-year-old. I don't feel that's personally appropriate,
You've got a
but that's my
Disney
personal
deck, haven't
opinion.
you?
I got a Disney deck. I
Yeah.
got like the Mons Tarot deck. I got some really fun, lighthearted decks that it, you know, whatever comes out there, it's not going to leave some horrifying impression, you know, because they're cutesy and they're fun. And there's just, you know, I agree. I think it is a disservice to water something down or sugarcoat something if you see something very real going on for someone in the cards. But it's really a case by case situation. And
yeah.
do you have consent from the parents, or if like Sharon said, the parents aren't around or aren't involved, are you just authentically working to help this person?
The
You know,
thing I see going on with most adults, I see them dismiss young people as, oh, your problems don't mean anything. Wait till you're an adult. That doesn't mean anything. You'll get over it. It's a lot of dismissal on how this person thinks or how this person feels. You don't know what love is. I see a lot of adults just dismiss. And when somebody that they respect and see as a professional sits down across from them and treats them like they would treat any other person, it goes so far that, like you said earlier, sometimes this is the first time that person can be heard because everybody else dismissed them because they were a child.
Right.
How dangerous do you think it is, though, I mean, there's no regulations on tarot cards. Like, you know, you can buy a deck of tarot cards for, I don't know, £10, £12, something like that. They are affordable. And there's nothing, you know, it's not like buying a bottle of alcohol or cigarettes. You could walk into a shop that sells tarot cards and buy a deck of tarot cards, and there's nothing against the law to stop you buying it. But if a child got wind of the fact that you can ask those cards anything, and the child does not have either the maturity or the sense of responsibility about it that we would have as responsible readers, I mean, is there a risk element there that we maybe should be addressing?
How many adults are out there doing the same damn thing with no maturity?
Exactly, I know.
Yeah,
No, I totally agree, Sharon. That's the point, though. But at least they are adults. I mean, is it a dangerous thing to put into the hands of a real minor who might be kind of troubled and who then might get cards that really do freak them out? Do you see what I'm saying?
That's
Yeah.
probably gonna happen, and it happens to the adults too. I know when I first started reading, I was what, 16, and all my little friends, all their questions, how am I gonna die? How am I gonna die? You know? And I was like, I'm not answering that. I don't no. Like, yeah, so the younger people are gonna get some silly questions, and they might answer those silly questions. But I think having tarot in my hands as a minor shaped me to be a more responsible adult.
Right. Okay.
I think it's like any other tool, you know, you don't put a chainsaw in a 6-year-old's hands, but,
But you
but
might not think that a deck of cards could be a dangerous thing. Do you see what I'm saying? At the end of the day, it's pieces of paper with print on it. But if you kind of got some clue that these are giving you messages, you know, in the wrong hands, and somebody getting something like the Ten of Swords, they might, that might totally freak someone out. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like, did you guys ever use the little paper fortune teller cootie
Yeah.
catcher things? And you know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I think it's a very different conversation, a minor reading for themselves versus someone reading for a minor.
yeah,
Because
Oh,
like,
definitely.
I think that like, because you know, when you're getting a reading done, presumably you're taking in that information. It can shape your choices. It can shape how you understand stuff. It can leave certain sort of impression on you that puts you one way or another because it came from someone else. There's a person there speaking to you that you can tie it to. Versus with cards, that can be very real. You could still pull that Ten of Swords. Oh my God. But you know what I mean? There's that different element of it came from an older person reading these cards. So there's those 2 points there versus I pulled this thing, or maybe I pulled the wrong one, or oh, maybe I could put this away, or you know, like it seems like a very different conversation. Those two.
Yeah. I
yeah,
think
totally.
yeah, I think it's a pretty, I mean, the question is really complicated. I don't think it has one answer because people don't mature at the same pace. Right? There's so many variables, right? And I think one, uh, maybe the most important step you can take if you're reading for a minor or someone who's a teenager, right, is to kind of try to gauge their level of maturity, their level of understanding of the world with all of its dark aspects, um, by kind of probing the questions that they pose to you and the sorts of the type of vocabulary even that they have, you know, and then based on that you can decide um, how bluntly, how deeply to kind of deliver
Yeah.
the messages of the tarot, you
Well,
know.
we do
Great
that
way
uh,
of
with
putting it.
adults as
and
well. You know, our
yeah, right,
delivery will change from person to person
yeah,
because you can tell when somebody can take, you know, a blunt answer,
right,
or when you have to be tactful.
Yeah.
yeah,
I do know how.
yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is that, like, one other reason you need to be a bit more careful with reading for young people is that they're still not economically independent and they're still dependent on their parents. And so, for example, if it turns out that one of the main roots, right, one of the main roots of their issues lies with one or both of their parents, like, or with the family environment in general, um, giving them very kind of straightforward messages or or like, let's say radical types of advice, like they might not be able to actually um, act upon it because they're just not, the power dynamics are not stacked in their favor,
But if
you
you're
know?
reading for a minor, if you're reading for whoever you're reading for, the cards aren't going to give a
Mm,
minor, you know, go out and get a job, divorce your parents type of information. We're
right.
we're still going to get accurate readings for them that
Mm,
are within those power dynamics.
right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think if you um it's tricky because I mean, I remember I did a reading once for someone who was not a minor, someone that was in his 30s, and then through the reading, it came out that he was like sexually molested by his uh by someone his mother was involved in at some point, you know. Um, but like if the same person had come to ask me for a reading at the time this was happening, the situation would have been trickier because then I might have been I might have been under a moral obligation to kind of intervene directly, you know?
Yeah,
So
that's something I would intercede in through
yeah,
social services or somehow to get that child help.
yeah,
Yeah,
Because that
I've
doesn't
seen.
change with our role as a reader, right? You're reading for someone and they confess a murder to you. Like if we, if we are, as a reader, it doesn't matter who you're reading for, if you find out illegal activity is going on, it doesn't matter if you're a reader, if you're just a friend or someone who overhears a conversation. You have a moral obligation or a legal obligation that you have that information to either tell the authorities or do something about it. That's like, at least that's the laws here. If I know
yeah,
about a crime and I am harboring a witness or something like that, that's something that morally, yes, and then legally you could have an obligation to.
Yeah.
I wonder if
yeah.
a tarot reader has ever had that, like someone saying, look, I did this terrible crime and all I really want to know is, am I going to get caught or found out?
I read an article just a year ago, and it happened in England. I don't know exactly where, but there was a tarot reader. She had a shop, and this man came into her shop for a reading. And halfway through the reading, she was like, "Oh, shit." He'd come to her straight after he killed his mother. And
Oh
Oh my
she
my
God.
saw it,
God.
and she was like, he needed somebody to talk to about it. And she talked to him, and then she was like, I got to go call the police now. But her phone in her shop didn't work. She had to go to the other shop. The guy sat there and waited for the police.
No.
And the police took hours to get there because they didn't believe her. I was doing a tarot reading. He killed his mom. It's,
Wait, so he
yeah,
Wow.
discovered through the reading that he killed his mom, or he told her?
it
And
came up in the reading. It was like devil, tower, all this stuff. And she was like, what just happened? And
yeah.
then and she talked to him. She didn't just leave him and say, I'm going to call the cops. She did her job. She read for him, she connected with him, and she helped him. And he got
Hmm.
help.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, I still think she was lucky, you
Yeah,
know?
she was lucky because yeah, she, she was
Oh my
lucky.
God. Have you got any questions about any of this reading for mine?
After this, I have to consider if I will be doing tarot readings. Because that sounds very dangerous.
Wow.
Now, so far, I'm enjoying my cards. So yeah, I have to see each of the card and see the stories of them.
Do you
So,
have any sort of young people in your family or anything?
so yeah, my boyfriend, he's got 16 years old daughter.
Okay.
And the other day she came over to me, she said, do you know anything about astrology? I said, maybe. So do you know rising sign of my daddy?
Aw.
And I said, Capricorn all the way through. And she was like, oh, I knew you had a parcel with the tarot cards. So she asked me if I can read them. I said, no, I have to still learn. So,
But if you kind of like felt confident enough to do a reading, would you be comfortable to do the reading for her with her being 16, or would that make any difference to you? Or do you think, yeah, why not,
I would be maybe a little bit stopped by my boyfriend to ask him, because he's always like, what are you doing, what she's doing. So maybe if she would promise, I will not tell the this. So I would answer some simple questions.
Yeah.
Like, shall I go out with this boy? I saw her last weekend in the park. Yeah, maybe that's something like that. But not like heavy questions like, when I will die, how I will die, or something like that,
I'll
as you
never
mentioned.
answer that question.
I think that's kind of, I do understand when I was 16, I would ask that, but
Right.
not now.
So how old was Marty when you first introduced him
I've
to
been
tarot?
reading for my children since they were born. They've always known tarot cards. They'd come home from school and, Mom, can we have tarot reading? 7, 8 years old. I mean, it's been,
Right.
it's so natural to me and to them that they think nothing of it. It's like
Wow.
part of life.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's like the best thing I think we as readers, need to make sure we're protecting ourselves in our, whether you're a professional reader or not a professional reader, because you could be reading for a minor on like anywhere of the parent scale, right? If the parents are absent or the parents are, everything that they do goes through me till they're 18, there's that range. So, just you want to make sure you're not overstepping a boundary, because the last thing you would want is a parent coming after you, coming after your business, whatever, right? Same thing with the reading for anybody in general, but with the minors, there is that extra additional thing just to be considerate of.
I think if you took the sort of like the legal side, or the kind of like the possibility of kind of upsetting someone out of it, I actually think that knowing the tarot and having kind of messages coming through via the tarot is a wonderful thing for younger people, to be quite honest.
I agree.
And I just think it's a shame that we would have to sort of be a little bit cautious in protecting ourselves, just to be, because you just don't want to come back. But I actually think all they can do really is benefit from it.
I agree. With a
Yeah.
responsible reader as a caveat, not just
Yeah.
some foof
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
picked up cards on the street corner.
Mm.
There are a
Mhm.
lot of them
Yep.
out there.
Right.
I think it's good for the imagination as well. If you can look at the card and you can see the story and think about the story of each card. It's really good for children.
I actually think they could probably read the cards very well, like just reading through the pictures. I think
That's what I did. I did this when I had my younger cousins. I had one of my decks out, and she just grabbed the card and was just started looking at it. Like, what do you see in that card? Because this particular little cousin, it was a very cool story, but she was shown a picture of her grandfather who had passed before she was born, and she
Right.
pointed at it and said, "Grandpa." No one had told her it was her grandpa, but she had seen him in the house before. Very cool little cousin that I have. So when I got to see her and I had my cards out, I was like, "What do you see in these cards?" Because I want to pick your brain, more than me. But it's a very cool thing to just, I don't know. I love what you said about that, Sharon. Like for me, this is not this tool is not a weapon. In many ways, it's something that we can really use to get in touch with ourselves, to get in touch with answers we need if it's used responsibly and respectfully. Like only good things can come of it if you're, approaching it with that level of respect, with that genuine authenticity of trying to find some answers. I don't know why that would be a tool that should be withheld.
And imagine how much more well-adjusted all of us would be if we were allowed to embrace our intuition and our ability to create instead of having it stifled by society.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah.
Would you charge the same money for a reading for a minor? Like,
I've never charged a minor. I've never charged a minor. They
Let's
don't
just say a complete stranger came to you with their child and they said, "I don't actually want you to do the reading for me. I want you to do this reading for my daughter. She's 13. I'm going to leave her with you for half an hour." Would you charge what you would normally charge for half an hour?
It's still my time.
Yeah.
It is still a half an hour of time.
Yeah.
And there's a responsible adult paying for it, not some poor kid that doesn't have any money.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still my half hour. Yeah.
What about you,
I
Kat?
say that now.
Yeah. Like, I agree, because in a situation like that, whether I was at a shop or at a market or at a fair, like I've probably paid something to be in that space where they're showing up. So there's a, you know, an obligation for myself to make the money back from what I've invested in being there. But yeah, if an adult came to me and said, here is my child, can you read for them? And they're already have that level of expectation that they're paying for a service, I would charge the same amount. But same thing with you, Sharon. If a younger person in serious distress came to me, the last thing I'm worried about is like making money off this kid. I want to know, how can we help?
And
Yeah,
even when
I
they
agree.
come to me just curious, I can't say no. I mean, I have this great love for kids and teenagers after the age of 5. Before 5, they're just little aliens. But after the age of 5, I like to feed their curiosity, and I like to speak to them like I speak to anybody else, because they have respect for that. They can tell. They're not stupid. So many adults just assume that they're stupid, and they really aren't.
How would you actually say that? I'm talking kind of young sort of teenagers here. Do you actually think that you could like hold their attention for an hour or two? My gut feeling is that it would be a fairly short reading.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you'll get the occasional teenager that will really dive into it, but that young. But for the most part, the younger ones, I don't even think I've done those really long ones for the 16-year-olds.
No.
You know.
But then I'm just thinking, like going back to Florrie again, you know, I was giving her, she was 16, she turned 17 during the course, but she was doing 2-hour lessons with me and she was completely engaged every single time. This was every week.
And that depends on the person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally depends on the person, because you'll have some that will sit with you for hours and hours, and others that just have other stuff to do. Again, you know, age is a factor in some things, and experience does change things, but experience also jades us.
Yes.
Or cynicizes us. If that's a new word, put it in your dictionary.
I like it.
And when you read for the younger people, it's amazing how you see that wonder and that beauty that we freaking forget, because life is hard. Life is hard. And at that age, that wonder and that beauty and that excitement should be present, you know? And it's really, really flipping nice to experience it as an adult.
I agree. I mean, I like being in the kind of presence of younger people. I think they're kind of like up to date, you know, certain things like the big archetypes of life, as we all know, do not change. They've been the same archetype since mythology, right? You know, and they will continue to be there for thousands more years from now. There will always be the lovers, the death card, like the devil, and how they manifest and play out. But but there are trends that kind of are generational things, and young people are much more sort of tuned into that than we would be without connections with young people. I think they're really, really important, young people.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting topic, right? Reading for minors, because it's not, man, it's the same thing like reading for people, you know, the range that you get from a incredibly mature 14-year-old or a man child who is 50 acting like a toddler, you know, it's all out there, you know. So using age as itself as an indicator for what service you're willing to provide can be tricky, because people don't fit into a box always of what age is appropriate for certain things.
Age does not equal
anything.
Whatever. I mean,
you know,
it definitely doesn't. I mean, there are older people that have not traveled. They've not done very much with their lives at all. whereas some other sort of younger people have done masses. But I think there is a fundamental difference though with older and younger, and that is the kind of the looking forward and the looking backward. Because I think when you're a very young person, even if it's subconsciously, you've got a lot of time ahead. Whereas an older person is more, a lot of it's behind them now, if that makes sense.
We're aware of our mortality.
Yeah. And that the time that we have got left maybe is more precious. So there is that.
That's true. Because you can get, like, I would say it's more common to get a 20, 30 year timeline question from someone who is, younger than
Yes.
you might want, I want over the next year or two. And that just also depends on what you're planning on doing with your life. You could definitely have someone who's 18, like, what is my next year going to be like? But it is a very, like, that's true. It would change the sort of where their mind is at, really, like what time span they're thinking about, what their questions are going to be.
Yes. Yeah. But no, it's a very interesting topic. So has anybody got any further questions on it? Kevin, are you still with us? I know you've left a little note.
I was just about to shut off and head into work, but it was a really good one. Thank you.
Oh, you're
Thanks
very
for coming.
welcome.
Thanks
Thanks
for the
going to
question.
topic.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
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 Don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep following us. I think Mandy froze. There she is.
Oh, I'm back now, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have any questions you want us to discuss on the podcast, send us a note and we'll be happy to take your question. And if you want to join the podcast and be here live, you can be one of our Patreon members.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. So we've got lots coming up, including a Halloween festival on Halloween. So head on over to our website, which is www.thepomegranategrove.com, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Take care,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Now.
Bye.
Thank you for engaging with us. Please like, subscribe and share. To book a personal, in-depth reading and to learn more about our incredible courses in tarot and astrology, please visit our website www.thepomegranategrove.com.